Picture this. I open my garage door on a quiet Tuesday morning, and my HOA neighbor starts screaming bloody murder, calling 911 claiming I stole her car. The problem? Her identical car is sitting right there in her driveway, and mine has been in my garage all night. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. It all started when I decided to take my car to get the oil changed. Simple enough, right? Wrong. In an HOA neighborhood, nothing is ever simple. I'd been living in Sunny Meadows subdivision for about 2 years. It's one of those cookie-cutter neighborhoods where every house looks like it was built by the same architect having the same fever dream. White picket fences, perfectly manicured lawns, and an HOA that treats the community guidelines like they're the 10 Commandments carved in stone. The HOA president is a woman named Karen Whitmore. Yes, her actual name is Karen, and yes, she lives up to every stereotype you can imagine. Karen is the type of person who measures your grass with a ruler and sends violation notices if it's a quarter inch too long. She's the human equivalent of a participation trophy. Nobody really wants her around, but somehow she keeps showing up. Karen drives a white BMW X5 that she treats like it's made of solid gold. She parks it in her driveway at the exact same angle every day, positioned so that it catches the morning sun just right. I swear she probably has a protractor to make sure the alignment is perfect. Now here's where things get interesting. I drive a white BMW X5 too. Same year, same model, same color. I bought it used about 6 months ago from a dealership across town. Pure coincidence, I thought. How was I supposed to know that Karen had been eyeing the exact same car? The morning of the incident, I woke up early to beat the rush at the oil change place. I threw on some sweatpants and an old t-shirt, grabbed my keys and hit the garage door opener. The door rumbled open, revealing my pristine white BMW sitting there like a beautiful, expensive albino whale. I was backing out of my driveway, minding my own business, when I heard the most ear-piercing shriek known to mankind. It sounded like someone was being murdered by a pack of angry banshees. I slammed on my brakes and looked around, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. That's when I saw her. Karen Whitmore was standing in her front yard, still in her pink terrycloth bathrobe and fuzzy slippers, pointing at my car like I was driving the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Her face was so red I thought she might spontaneously combust right there on her perfectly edged lawn. Thief! Thief! Call 911. He's stealing my car, she screamed at the top of her lungs. I sat there for a moment, trying to process what was happening. Stealing her car? I looked at my car, then at her driveway, where her identical white BMW sat innocently in its usual spot. Then I looked back at Karen, who was now running toward my vehicle like some sort of deranged suburban superhero. "Ma'am," I called out, rolling down my window, "I think there's been some confusion." Confusion? Confusion? Karen's voice went up about 3 octaves. "I know what I'm looking at. That's my car. I just bought that car." By this point, neighbors were starting to emerge from their houses like prairie dogs popping up from their holes. Mrs. Henderson from next door came out with her coffee mug, wearing the expression of someone who knew she was about to witness quality entertainment. Bob from across the street appeared with his newspaper, not even pretending he wasn't there for the show. "Karen," I said, trying to remain calm, "look at your driveway. Your car is right there." Karen whipped around, saw her car, then whipped back to glare at me. You could practically see the gears grinding in her head as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. "That's impossible. You stole my car and replaced it with a fake one." I blinked. Then I blinked again. "Ma'am, did you just accuse me of stealing your car and replacing it with an identical fake car?" "Yes. It's the only logical explanation." At this point, I was genuinely concerned about Karen's mental health. "Karen, we have the same car. Same make, model, year, and color. It happens." "No, it doesn't. I spent weeks researching that exact car. I'm the only one who should have it." While Karen was having her complete mental breakdown, she had apparently already called 911 because I could hear sirens in the distance. Great. Just what I needed on a Tuesday morning. A police visit because Karen couldn't comprehend the concept of 2 people owning similar cars. 2 patrol cars pulled up and 4 officers got out. They looked like they were expecting to handle a major crime scene, not a neighborhood dispute involving a woman in a bathrobe having an existential crisis about car ownership. Officer Martinez, a patient-looking man in his 40s, approached Karen first. "Ma'am, you called about a stolen vehicle?" "Yes. He stole my car." Karen pointed at me dramatically. "I demand you arrest him immediately." Officer Martinez looked at my car, then at Karen's car in her driveway, then back at Karen. Ma'am, your car appears to be in your driveway. That's a fake. Officer Martinez rubbed his forehead like he was getting a headache. Officer Johnson, his partner, walked over to me. Sir, can I see your license and registration? Of course, I said, grabbing my documents from the glove compartment. I'm just trying to go get my oil changed. Officer Johnson examined my paperwork while Karen continued her rant in the background. The VIN numbers. Check the VIN numbers. He probably swapped them. Officer Martinez had moved on to examining Karen's car. Ma'am, your VIN number matches your registration perfectly. Then check his. I bet it's fake. Officer Johnson came back with my documents. Everything checks out, sir. Your registration is valid, your license is current, and your VIN matches. Karen's face went through several shades of red before settling on a lovely shade of purple. But, how can two people have the same car? Officer Martinez looked like he was struggling not to laugh. Ma'am, BMW made more than one of these vehicles. That's what I've been trying to tell her, I said. By now, the entire neighborhood had gathered to watch the spectacle. Mrs. Chun from down the street was taking pictures with her phone. The kids waiting for the school bus were pointing and giggling. Even Mr. Peterson, the grumpy old man who never talks to anyone, was standing on his porch with what might have been a smile on his face. Karen suddenly seemed to realize she was standing in the middle of the street in her bathrobe, making a complete fool of herself in front of the entire neighborhood. She pulled her robe tighter and tried to regain some dignity. Well, this is still highly suspicious. You probably planned this. Ma'am, Officer Johnson said gently. Planned what exactly? To confuse me. To make me think he stole my car when he didn't. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Ma'am, that's not a crime. In fact, that's not even a thing. I decided to try one more time to be reasonable. Karen, I bought this car 6 months ago. I have all the paperwork. I've been parking it in my garage every night since then. You've probably seen me driving it around the neighborhood. Karen's eyes narrowed. I never pay attention to other people's cars. Then how did you know it was your car when you saw me driving it? I asked. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again like a fish trying to breathe air. She clearly hadn't thought that through. Officer Martinez stepped in. Ma'am, I think this has been a misunderstanding. Both vehicles are legally owned by their respective owners. No crime has been committed. But he has the same CR as me. Karen protested. That's not illegal, ma'am, Officer Johnson added. It's just an unfortunate coincidence. Karen stood there for a moment, processing this information. You could almost hear the Windows shutdown sound playing in her head as she tried to reboot. Fine, she said finally. But I want it on record that this is highly irregular. We'll make a note, Officer Martinez said diplomatically. As the officers were packing up to leave, Karen suddenly had another epiphany. Wait, what if he did it on purpose? What if he bought the same car just to mess with me? I stared at her in disbelief. Karen, I bought this car from a dealership 40 miles away. How would I even know what car you drive? You could have been stalking me. Officer Johnson looked at me with sympathy. Sir, where did you buy your vehicle? Murphy's Auto on Highway 6, I replied. Ma'am, where did you buy yours? He asked Karen. Prestige BMW downtown, she answered. 2 different dealerships, Officer Johnson noted. Sir, do you have your purchase receipt? I pulled out my phone and showed him the digital receipt. Karen demanded to see it too, as if she could spot some evidence of my elaborate car-stalking conspiracy. This shows you bought the car in February, Officer Martinez observed. Ma'am, when did you buy yours? Karen suddenly got very quiet. Last month. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. So, Officer Johnson said slowly, you bought your car 4 months after he bought his identical car, and now you're accusing him of copying you? Karen's face went through another color transformation, this time settling on a splotchy red and white pattern that reminded me of a strawberry milkshake. That's not. I mean, she stammered. Mrs. Henderson chose this moment to speak up from her front porch. Karen, honey, we've all seen him driving that car for months. Remember when you complained to the HOA about how his car was too flashy for the neighborhood? Karen's eyes went wide. She had apparently forgotten about her previous complaints. And didn't you say something about keeping up with the Joneses when you bought yours? Bob added helpfully from across the street. At this point, Karen looked like she wanted to disappear into the ground. The officers were clearly trying not to laugh, and half the neighborhood was either grinning or taking pictures. I have to go, Karen muttered and practically sprinted back to her house, her fuzzy slippers making little shuffling sounds on the pavement. Officer Martinez handed me back my documents. "Sorry about that, sir. You're free to go get your oil changed." "Thanks, officers," I said. This was definitely not how I planned to start my morning. "Just a typical Tuesday in suburbia," Officer Johnson said with a grin. As I drove away, I could see Karen peeking out from behind her curtains, probably plotting her next move. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of the Karen saga. Over the next few weeks, Karen launched what I can only describe as a campaign of petty revenge. She filed HOA complaints about everything she could think of. My grass was too long, it wasn't. My trash cans were out too early, they weren't. My car was parked at the wrong angle, there's no rule about parking angles. Each violation notice was more ridiculous than the last. She complained that my mailbox was aggressively black and didn't match the aesthetic vision of the neighborhood. She claimed my garden gnome was inappropriate lawn ornamentation because it was wearing sunglasses. She even tried to argue that my doormat, which said "Welcome," was too friendly and made other residents feel pressured to be social. But Karen's masterpiece came 3 weeks after the incident. I got home from work to find a violation notice taped to my front door. The complaint: intentional vehicle intimidation through copycat automotive choices. I had to read it 3 times before I understood what she was trying to say. According to Karen, by continuing to drive my car, the one I bought 4 months before hers, I was engaging in psychological warfare designed to intimidate her through automotive mimicry. I decided I'd had enough. It was time to fight fire with fire, or in this case, fight crazy with documentation. I spent the next weekend putting together what I called the Karen Files. I compiled every ridiculous violation notice, printed out the timeline of our car purchases, gathered witness statements from neighbors, and even found security camera footage from Mrs. Chen's house that showed me driving my car around the neighborhood long before Karen bought hers. The HOA monthly meeting was held in the community center, a beige building that looked like it was designed by someone who thought personality was a dirty word. About 30 residents showed up, which was actually a pretty good turnout considering most people usually avoided these meetings like the plague. Karen sat in the front row, clutching a folder that I suspected contained more ridiculous complaints about me. She kept shooting glares in my direction like I was personally responsible for every problem in her life. The HOA board consisted of 5 people who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The president, a tired-looking man named Doug, called the meeting to order and began going through the usual business: lawn care schedules, pool maintenance, complaints about people not picking up after their dogs. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. "We have some ongoing disputes between residents that need to be addressed," Doug announced. "Karen Whitmore has filed several complaints against." He checked his notes: Jake Morrison. Karen immediately shot to her feet. "Thank you, Doug. I'm here to report a clear case of harassment and intimidation by my neighbor." She launched into a 15-minute presentation about how I was systematically targeting her through various means, including but not limited to aggressive car ownership, intimidating lawn maintenance, and hostile mailbox positioning. The room was silent except for the sound of people trying not to laugh. Mrs. Henderson was covering her mouth with her hand. Bob was staring at the ceiling like he was praying for strength. When Karen finished, Doug looked at me. "Mr. Morrison, would you like to respond?" I stood up and pulled out my folder. "I would, thank you." I presented my evidence calmly and methodically. I showed the timeline of our car purchases, read witness statements from neighbors, and displayed the security footage on my laptop. So to summarize, I concluded, Mrs. Whitmore called 911 because I was driving a car that I purchased 4 months before she bought her identical car. Since then, she has filed 17 violation notices against me, including one for intentional vehicle intimidation. I'm not sure how someone can intimidate another person by continuing to own something they bought first, but here we are. The room erupted in murmurs and chuckles. Doug looked at Karen, who was turning red again. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you have any response to this evidence?" Karen stood up, clutching her folder. He's obviously very organized for someone who claims this is all innocent." "Ma'am," Doug said patiently, "being organized isn't a crime or an HOA violation. But what about the principle of the thing? He knew I wanted that car. How could he have known that if you bought yours 4 months after his?" Board member Lisa asked. Karen opened and closed her mouth several times before sitting down heavily in her chair. Doug cleared his throat. "Based on the evidence presented, all complaints filed by Mrs. Whitmore against Mr. Morrison are dismissed. Mrs. Whitmore filing false or frivolous complaints is itself a violation of HOA guidelines. Consider this your official warning. The meeting ended with several neighbors coming up to me to apologize for Karen's behavior and share their own Karen stories. Apparently, she had a history of bizarre complaints and confrontations with various residents. As I was packing up my materials, Karen approached me. I braced myself for another confrontation, but she just stood there looking defeated. "I just really wanted that car," she said quietly. For a moment I actually felt sorry for her. "Karen, there are probably thousands of cars just like ours on the road. You can still enjoy yours." She nodded sadly and walked away. I thought that might be the end of our saga, but Karen had one final surprise in store for me. 2 days later, I came home to find my driveway empty except for Karen standing next to a large sign that read, "Reserved for original white BMW owner only." "Karen," I said, getting out of my wife's car. She had dropped me off. "What are you doing?" "I've solved our problem," she announced proudly. "I'm establishing priority parking. Since you bought your car first, you get priority." I stared at the sign, then at Karen, then back at the sign. "Karen, this is my driveway. It's on my property. Of course I have priority. I'm the only one allowed to park here." Karen's face fell as she realized what she had done. She had just spent who knows how much money on a sign to designate that I could park in my own driveway. "Oh," she said in a small voice. "I didn't think about that. Also," I added gently, "how did you get into my driveway to put up the sign?" Karen's eyes went wide as she realized she had technically been trespassing on my property to install a sign giving me permission to use my own driveway. She quickly grabbed the sign and hurried back to her house without another word. The next morning I found a note in my mailbox. It was from Karen, written on official HOA letterhead. "Dear Mr. Morrison, I would like to apologize for my recent behavior. Upon reflection, I realized that two people can own similar cars without it being a conspiracy or act of intimidation. I also realize that you cannot steal something from someone who still has that thing. Additionally, I understand that driveways are private property and do not require reservation signs. I hope we can be good neighbors going forward. Sincerely, Karen Whitmore. P.S. Your garden gnome sunglasses are actually quite stylish." I couldn't help but smile. Maybe there was hope for Karen after all. 6 months later, Karen and I have settled into an awkward but peaceful coexistence. She still gives my car suspicious looks sometimes, like she's making sure it hasn't morphed into hers overnight, but she stopped filing complaints. The neighborhood kids have turned our story into a legend. They now refer to identical cars as Karen twins, and any minor neighborhood dispute as going full Karen. As for me, I still drive my white BMW, still park in my own driveway, and still appreciate the daily reminder that truth really is stranger than fiction. And my garden gnome? He still wears his sunglasses, standing proudly on my lawn like a tiny beacon of suburban rebellion. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had bought a different car, or if Karen had chosen a different color. But then I realized that if it hadn't been the car, Karen probably would have found something else to obsess over. Because in every HOA neighborhood, there's always someone who treats the community guidelines like they're the Constitution, the Bible, and the laws of physics all rolled into one. And sometimes that someone calls 911 because you opened your garage door on a Tuesday morning.